Skylanders Spyro's Adventure was not just one of those games you played as a kid. It was so much more. It was the game that defined so much of our generation. A simple idea that brought our imaginations to life. You'll be joining me step by step through the story as we discuss each game's gameplay, characters, Skylanders, art direction, unique gimmicks, and so much more crucial factors of what creates a great Skylanders experience and what made the simple concept shine. I'm going to get right into the series and start with Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. Skylanders was brought to the world by developers Toys for Bob, but its roster was far less impressive before 2011. The devs at Toys for Bob was experimenting with the vision of bringing toys to life back to the public mainstream, and thought Spyro's characters would be an ideal starting ground. They approached Activision for the rights of the Spyro series, and when successful later went one step further to get the game as an exclusive for the Nintendo Wii. Nintendo declined this offer, but their vision was formed around the Wii's hardware anyway, and decided to expand the whole scape even further to all platforms, which led us to Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. The concept is simple. Skylanders, the defender of the Skylands, have been sent away from their realm into the real world where they are turned into toys. The player is a portal master who must bring these toys back to life to save the Skylands from the evil Dark Lord Chaos. There are 8 Skylander elements in total: magic, water, tech, fire, earth, life, air, and undead. Each element has 4 playable Skylanders associated with them and can be used to unlock certain areas throughout the game. The story kicks off and begins in a ravaged village in the Skylands, which is under attack from a tornado. The Portal Master sends down a Skylander to save the villagers from the tornado, and a few enemies show themselves along the way. Learning the controls and mechanics and familiarising yourself with the repeating themes of puzzles and fighting that's a common pattern all throughout the game. We save the mayor and villagers of the town and meeting Flynn, who takes us away from the tornado. A character named Hugo informs us of the destruction of the Core of Light and a man named Master Eon, a portal master that protected the Skylands with the Core of Light, that keeps the world safe from the darkness. And that darkness returned one day through Lord Chaos, who wants to take his revenge on Master Eon for banishing him to the Outlands. A battle breaks out with the Dark Minions and the Skylanders, where Chaos destroys the Core of Light, blasting himself away and killing Master Eon. At the last moment, the Skylanders were shrunk and sent far away to the real world. Whilst Master Eon did not survive the blast, he was turned into a spirit unable to fight. The Skylanders are petrified into toys, which introduces the player to the game. The player acts as a portal master and must use their Skylander toys on a magical portal to transport them back to the magic of the Skylands to save it from Lord Chaos. And so it is our duty as portal master to rebuild the Skylands and repair the Core of Light. With our first sight headed to a village in the Skylands that was overrun by Chaos's minions, where a strong fighter named Callie is captured, so the Skylanders and Flynn go to find her. This level increases the difficulty just a slight bit with a few trickier challenges and enemies, easing us into the gameplay a little more of solving puzzles and fighting ahead. Once we save Callie, she agrees to join our journey in repairing the Core of Light, which Hugo now has the original blueprints for. We are sent to the Skydocks to find a propeller, which Flynn needs if he is to take us to where the elemental air source is held, one of the 8 elements needed to repair the Core of Light. Along the docks are turrets to shoot down enemy drone warships occupying the island, fighting a lot of stronger enemies and past some platforming sections until we save Persephone, a fairy who will be the method of the game's upgrading system, back at the Core of Light. But we persist further, destroying heavy warships and finding the golden propeller for Flynn. Now his ship is upgraded with the golden propeller, he takes us to the stormy stronghold where the eternal air source lays and enemies are trying to harness its powers. This is the final level in this area and shows the importance just through the map's surroundings, huge hurricanes and more dramatic events with some much harder platforming and battling sections. The enemies have destroyed a bridge to the stronghold's centre, so we've got to rebuild it and find the elemental air source. Our retrieval of the elemental air source has allowed Master Eon to come down to the Skylands in his spirit form to help guide us. The elemental sources all work together to communicate with the ancient technology of the world that comes together to create the core of light. This plan is discovered by Chaos, who hatches a new plan to stop the new Portal Master. A fish named Gurglefin is locked in a prison, and we've got to solve a picklock puzzle to set him free. When we do, he then agrees to help us locate the elemental water source and takes us on his ship to Oil Spill Island, where trolls have captured Gurglefin's people and dig for oil to sell to Chaos. The entire mission is focused on saving each of the caged Gilman and freeing the land from trolls. This mission introduces laser puzzles and is our first level in a brand new area that contrasts from the last. Laser puzzles are a repeated theme in this mission and the whole game, but its focus on this mission gets you familiar quickly, as later on you destroy big smoke belchers by solving these puzzles and throwing bombs inside, destroying the troll refinery. Back at the core of light, Hugo's telescope, the Far Viewer, is rusty and needs oil to repair it. Luckily, after the last mission, Gurglefin builds an oil rig on the hub island to give us all the oil we ever need, and repairs the Far Viewer, which he uses to find the twin spouts of Ocean Major Minor, but we need it in order to use the eternal water source. But where it is hidden is the Dark Water Cove, and Gurglefin warns us of what's ahead, and takes us to the Pirate Cove, where we fight our way into its fortress to find the spout. This mission is my favourite so far. It's got a cool, whimsical pirate setting and was really fun to play. We finish our time here by capturing a large enemy ship and escape quickly. The twin spouts of Ocean Major Minor was forged by the scales of a Leviathan and locks itself within the core of light. All that is left to find is the eternal water source and put it inside the spouts. The Leviathan Lagoon is a relaxing beach landscape that holds the eternal water source hidden somewhere. The secret code to unlock its location is revealed by 4 secret statues that must be aligned within a shrine. Along the way to the shrine, we find these statues being stolen one by pirates, as well as fighting a lot of water elemental enemies. But hiding itself underwater lays a huge Leviathan that eats you if you linger too long in the water. Throughout this level, there are intermissions where pirates attack the lagoon, and you must fight them off using turrets much like earlier on. Once all 4 statues are found and placed, the eternal water source reveals itself, as well as Chaos, who sends his elemental water minions at you in a successive wave during this boss battle, involving 3 various elemental water minions and periods of obstacles across the map, with hundreds of sharks restricting our area. This is our first real boss fight against Chaos, and pays off pretty well. After we fight for a while, he deploys every single spell and minion at us at once, but we reign supreme and take the elemental water source to repair the core of light. At the beach, we find and fix a Clamtron 4000 who can turn clams into big fat pearls, but it is broken and instead turns clams into bombs, which we use to clear the rocks blocking the way to the bridge. He then escorts us up the bridge to the Crystal Eye Castle run by trolls. The only way to pass through is to destroy the Seeing Eye Towers and defeat the trolls in the castle. This castle is pretty creepy. It's filled with eyes that stare at you and have eye patterns all over the place. This is the longest mission so far, but it's a really cool castle with some awesome enemies along the way. Once we destroy the 2 Seeing Eye Towers, we find the Crystal Eye, which we can use to hold the Eternal Earth Source, which is held by the villagers in Stone Town, keeping it safe until we arrive. Molten takes us there to find the town overrun by some giants, and also uses the same eye infrastructures in the Crystal Eye Castle, only this time in a beachside town where a stone giant runs rampage. This is our second boss fight and involves a lot of avoiding rock-based attacks and finding tiny gaps to attack whilst focusing on staying alive. The rock giant drops the Eternal Earth Source when defeated, which we can then implant into the core of light, which frees a new character named Arbo that grew from the ground using the magic of the Eternal Earth Source. He remembers in his past life how to find the eternal life source by finding and planting the seeds of life so their roots can point us in the right direction. Arbo plants a giant beanstalk raising into the sky and takes us to the Tree of Life. The entire mission is a climb up the Tree of Life, freeing it from enemies trying to cut it down, and find the seeds. Lots of powerful life guardians defend the seeds, but once we take them, we plant them back at the base where it points us towards the falling forest that is under deforestation by goblins and large tree cutting machines. We have to save as many as we can. Enemies have set up bases all across the forest and have destroyed so much. The tree cutting machines are weak to rockets that we find hidden across the forest. We will soon stumble upon the Great Stump where the eternal life source rests, but alongside it is Chaos, using the eternal life source as bait to destroy us, the Portal Master, and sends his life minions after us. This is another boss fight involving 3 elemental minions and elemental spells causing obstacles around the terrain. These are pretty fun and my personal highlights of the gameplay, very similar to the previous water boss battle. These life minions are also darkness copies of regular Skylanders and create an interesting fight against Chaos. Once we defeat him, we can take the elemental life source and take it back to the core of light. With each elemental source, we see the core of light grow one small feature at a time, become a growingly grander spectacle that's pretty cool. It evolves as we progress through the story. Sergeant Robot barges in and informs us trolls are keeping something hidden at a heavily guarded warehouse. Hugo deducts this is a golden gear, and it's needed to rebuild the core of light. Sergeant Robot counts on the Skylander to retrieve this gear from the Troll warehouse, which is filled with strong Troll workers, complicated puzzles, and explosive mines. We find the Mabu captain and have to locate pieces of a map, torn apart, and use it to navigate through the minefield, safely leading us through trenches closed off with large walls. We find mega bombs to blast through walls, and after long battles through the trenches, we free the factories of a warehouse from Troll occupation by raising 4 flags and quickly retreat with the glowing goo that we put into the core of light. All that's left to locate is the eternal tech source at the battlefield, and Sergeant Robot comes along to stop the trolls from using it to create new weapons. At the battlefield, the defences have been overrun and the control team cut off with little time to act. Head of the control team is General Rizzo, and when we meet up with him, he asks for our help to get past the troll barriers by using mega bombs. Across the battlefield, there are tanks, trolls, and a lot of mega bombs we use to clear the way to the fort, which at the end, we claim the eternal tech source from a tank mini-boss. This boss fight is set through the trenches of the map, and can be a little difficult. The eternal tech source fuses itself with the core of light and activates the ancient technology inside. Cutscenes of chaos, blah blah blah. Some spooky noises are heard coming from the beach, and upon investigation, we find T-Bone, who needs help finding the rest of his skeleton body and won't stop making puns. Hugo says that T-Bone's head would make a great receptacle for the eternal sources. He declined the offer, but did insist he can help us find something to fill the role, and takes the Skylander down to the underworld in the crawling catacombs. Here we find lots of puzzles, skeletons, spiders of all sizes, and having our sight taken away due to the darkness. Managing to find our way through to the end leads to huge waves of enemies guarding the skull mass, which fits perfectly into the core of light, and requires the eternal undead source that's in the cadaverous crypt, which to me is the first time this game felt very close to a dungeon crawler. The puzzles are much harder and longer with harder hitting enemies, but defending the eternal undead source is Lord Chaos and his undead minions. More darkness copies of Skylanders are sent at us one at a time, with intervals of undead spells shooting lasers across from the battlefield. A difficult fight, and Chaos sends all 3 minions at the same time, as well as more powerful undead spells with faster, more complicated lasers and faster attacks from the minions. It may be difficult, but not impossible, and defeating Chaos makes him retreat while we claim the eternal undead source, nearly fully rebuilding the core of light. The mines are blocked up whilst a research team was mining for the Crucible of the Ages, and Diggs asks for our help blowing up the debris and clearing the tracks. We enter the mines and find lots of moles under attack and in danger. This level is short and structured around saving these miners, with a new mining tool that we use to mine through rocks and find hidden new areas in the level whilst finding the crucible. Diggs hurt his leg and can't escape on his own, so we push him to the entrance where we learn the seismic activity opened up a new track that goes deeper into the mines. But we must find the eternal fire source from the lava lakes to fully repair it. However, in the mines, the railways have gotten crossed and we must focus repairing the tracks and unlocking gates to allow Diggs' entrance to dwell deeper into the mines, where we find sabotaged tracks by none other than Glumshanks, who was ordered by Chaos to stop us from finding the eternal fire source and caused us to repair the tracks along our way. We use makeshift tracks by filling the gaps with rocks in a puzzle format. After we repair the tracks, we catch Glumshanks off guard and chase him down to the lava lakes. Hidden somewhere is the eternal fire source, surrounded by much more dangerous enemies. At the end, Chaos reveals himself to defend the area that holds the eternal fire source and take it for himself, summoning new dark enemies. So in a last-ditch effort, he deploys all 3 of his dark minions at once, as well as his environmental obstacles, unleashing all his powers to take us down. After defeating Chaos again, he retreats, leaving the eternal fire source ours to claim. There is only one source left to get, the eternal magic source. Flynn is alerting us that a statue out by the ocean is suddenly moving on its own. This is the Weapon Master, who has been awakened by his 10,000-year slumber. He is the keeper of many secrets and has been waiting for one to come by to pass on his secrets. He sends us to the Quicksilver Vault where new discoveries await. The eternal source of magic was the original source of all creations but was not able to be controlled. The vault gate is locked and we must prove our worth and triumph through the Quicksilver Vaults that are ridden with new powerful enemies. The Quicksilver Crypts is possibly my favourite area in the game, at least visually. I love the dark fantasy themed dungeons, huge metal chain bridges, and the electric blue water gives it that magical vibe really well, but after a few gates are unlocked, and we see in the distance the Quicksilver lays dormant, but will only be unlocked if 3 energy beams are aligned with 3 seals. Each seal is restricted by a puzzle, so once we align each beam, the very essence of all magical beings, the Quicksilver, is passed on to us. We can finally bind the magic within the Core of Light and are so close to bringing the Skylands back to how it once was. The Archean Weapon Master informs us the eternal magic source is locked away in their ancient Archean armory, which holds the full extent of their ancient power. This stands out as one of the cooler missions in the game, because not only does it involve the gameplay we know and love so far, it adds a whole area where we ride and control an Archean war machine through the armory to find a temple, destroying enemies and obstructions with our punches and missiles. It's such a cool, grand way to lead up to the game's finale. The puzzles get larger and trickier in the temple, which is fitting, and once we find and use a security card to progress, after a while, we find 3 small vaults that need to be opened and activate the switches inside that unlocks the eternal magic source, the final component of the Core of Light. We have now completed the rebuilding of the Core of Light, as it holds each of the eternal elemental sources. Chaos and Glumshanks are blinded by the light shining from the core and retreat back to the Outlands, where his kingdom lies. The Skylanders have saved the world from darkness, but not from Chaos, as he might return with the same intentions as before. Sergeant Robot has the location of the lair, and we make way to his kingdom to rid him from the Skylands once and for all. This is the most difficult area in the game, and you're gonna struggle without level 10 Skylanders. It's filled with large amounts of powerful enemies and so many traps that caught me off guard and killed me. A lot of the castle's platforms move between one another and on their own. After completing the puzzles and unlocking the gates, we head to Chaos's castle. Chaos uses the same machines and minions he used to destroy the Core of Light, most notably his Hydra that has 4 heads of different elements and switches its attack very frequently onto the battlefield. Chaos only reveals his location for a few seconds when attacking and gives us tiny chances to deal small pieces of damage. During each step of the fight, he sends 3 minions we fought earlier on in the game and then them all at once. In a rage once they are defeated, he kills his own minions and lets newer minions take their XP. These are other dark minions we fought earlier in the game, and this repeats 2 more times until we can dodge each Hydra's attacks, each minion's attacks, and damage Chaos enough between each wave. Chaos realizes he doesn't need his minions, only his Hydra, and increase the rapid speed of a Hydra's attacks, making the entire battlefield a survival obstacle course, making it extremely hard to damage Chaos. The people of Skylands traps Chaos in a magic prison and teleports him far away as he shrinks and is shot into the real world. Spyro's adventure story isn't just over and done with when the story ends. The story can be further enhanced with the lost scrolls scattered across the Skylands. These scrolls reveal further information on characters, locations, and the history of the Skylands. The world building expands pretty exponentially through these 16 scrolls. I'm not going to read all of them out, but a few do stand out, like those with more information on characters like Eon and Chaos, as well as the history of the Archeans and the Skylanders. Eon used to be a servant boy, polishing pans for a portal master, until one day he possibly accidentally teleported the portal master away. The most interesting is Chaos. Once born a prince, but was discriminated against for his ugly looks and awful smells. He could not take it anymore, so he gave up his royal name and headed out into the wilderness with his servant Glumshanks, where he was consumed by the darkness. The evil Archean sorcerer kings lived in dark cities deep underground, but met their doom when 3 magicians of the Skylands combined their strength to bind the royal city of darkness in a sealed vault of eternal sleep. The Skylanders may seem like slaves to the Portal Master, but it is quite the opposite. They freely choose to serve the Portal Master eagerly. There are many more scrolls expanding the world building of the Skylands, and a huge addition to what makes this game so great. Spyro's Adventure overall is a great fun game, not too complicated but not too boring. It's a decent first entry with some shining qualities, like its appealing and its simplistic story. Rebuilding the Core of Light by collecting each element because Chaos destroyed it, and ridding of their most powerful defender, Master Eon. It's displayed immediately the balance of good versus evil and shows us Chaos is pure evil. Every map is distinct and a different theme. You might get 1 or 2 missions in the same area, but it throws you somewhere new pretty quick. You begin to look forward to the next area, where we have some scattered gimmicks like shooting turrets at enemy drones, or much later on controlling an Archean warrior. And what takes us further is the heroic challenges. I struggled pretty hard with some of the time limits and requirements. Callie being the strong queen she is, she has tough heroic challenges that give certain Skylanders permanent boosts. Callie serves a purpose outside of the story, and feels like an important NPC, which leads me to how every NPC plays a role to the Skylands. They all contribute something to help the wider society grow, which I think is a great message for the kids playing the game back in 2011. Sure, not all serve much purpose after their role in the story, but that's due to the scope of the game. They all still contribute very well, and a few of them do make you laugh with their wacky personalities. But in one of them you may have heard a familiar voice. The Skylanders series grows into attracting many A-list Hollywood actors, but in Spyro's Adventure, the star is Patrick Warburton for Flynn.
Double boom! No.
He brings Flynn's personality to life and makes him one of the funnier characters in this game and the entire series. On top of this, the entire game's soundtrack is amazing. The reason is because of Hans Zimmer. I have no idea how they got him to compose this game's OST, but he did it so well and boosts this game's feeling tenfold. I do enjoy such a large roster of playable characters. Even if they are locked behind a paywall, you can pick them up pretty cheap nowadays, and really expands the depth of the story through these silly little toys. And speaking of the story, I think the concept of toys to life is just fun and pretty cool. But implementing that feature into the story of the game still makes me smile to this day, especially as a child. Being told that you are the Portal Master and it's your job to save the Skylands with just some toys is amazing. This just shocks a child's imagination, and it really made me think deeper about all my other toys growing up. I think if there was any example of the ideal concept and story to appeal to children, this would be it. After all, this is a kids game, but it's made in such a way that even us years and years later can appreciate the depth of the game and the magical essence. But the story is filled with collectibles, some of which give you discounts at Persephone's, but more importantly the scrolls. All provide information on locations and people in the Skylands, expanding the lore, the world building, and making a deeper appreciation of the world. The starter pack characters are also great. I think the names of these Skylanders may be a little stupid, but they're whimsical and fun, and I like how the game embraces its whimsical side. I'm not saying this is a perfect game, or that it goes downhill from here. There are a few negatives I noticed. The levels do find themselves repetitive very often, using the same simplistic formulaic story to push the level structure, but due to the manner of the story, the missions become repetitive, solving the same type or similar puzzles in every level with intermissions of fighting to find an item that holds an elemental source. This happens 8 times. Along the way, it does break up the structure a tiny bit, but not enough to change in gameplay to switch up the pacing or at least hide the formulaic story. Not only the story, but the boss fights too. Each and every Chaos fight is the exact same, with the exception of the final. He sends 3 Dark Skylanders at you through his dark portal and breaks up the fights with environmental obstacles to avoid. Then after passing each wave, he sends them all at once. This happens repeatedly, and all that changes is who the enemies are and which obstacles comes your way. Much like the story, it is very formulaic. The final fight against Chaos takes these elements and expands upon it pretty well, but still repeats itself, and actually gets very tedious coming to the Hydra's attacks so frequently and repetitively. Don't get me wrong, it's a cool fight, but it drags on way too long, with the tiny chances to attack and repetitive movesets. Also, at times during boss fights and regular levels, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with the poorly balanced damage to health ratio, especially when using lower level Skylanders. You just take way too much damage and gives you little incentive to actually use anybody other than your big damage dealers. I only faced this issue during boss fights where I was forced to swap Skylanders, but I did notice when I would try to level up my weaker ones in the late game areas, it's very difficult to do anything, and I feel it's very poorly balanced. There also isn't much fluidity in the movement or moveset. All Skylanders start with 2 abilities that can upgrade into 3, but all Skylanders with wings takes up that 1 combat ability with the ability to fly, which is cool, but they are also given less attacks to use. The major annoyance in the combat mechanics across the entire community is the lack of a jump button. It simply doesn't exist, which makes it even harder to level up Skylanders and survive longer, which is weird because the 3DS version of Spyro's Adventure does include a jump button. It's not a complete criticism of the gameplay, I enjoyed it quite a lot, but you can't help but notice it's one of the larger areas where Spyro's Adventure lacks. You can tell the gameplay has aged, not necessarily poorly, but not well by any means. It was held back at the time by the game structuring around the Nintendo Wii's hardware capability and limitations, which was actually pretty poor at the time, leading to less complex mechanics, slower load times, lower resolution graphics, which only reveals how further the game has aged. The level structure could be completely randomized, and it would barely change the game. The missions feel very separated. Although they do all have an impact to repairing the Skylands, they don't feel connected to one another, and every level feels different for good and for bad. I understand Spyro's Adventure was the first in the series, with doubt a sequel might even happen, but the gameplay is just meh. I don't think it's just aged gameplay, I think it's just mechanically bad. There is no jumping, which turns this into a makeshift dungeon crawler, and each Skylander has repetitive moves which could be fun, but the movement itself isn't fluid, and all the flying Skylanders have a move replaced with a fly button, so there's even less. I personally don't think it looks or plays bad, but knowing it was held back for building it around the Wii just makes me think this game could have looked and felt even better. And my final negative is that the game is locked behind a paywall. The entire game cannot be completed with the starter pack alone, and you are left felt missing out on these secret areas. Luckily nowadays we can find most of them for pretty cheap, but the entire system of Toys to Life is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's extremely awesome and cool to bring these toys to life. On the other hand, you are forced to pay and collect a lot just to enjoy the game to its fullest extent. Now, I know that this is the concept I just praised. I love the concept of Toys to Life, but it comes with the issue of gameplay being locked behind a paywall that is proportionally more expensive than modern day DLCs. It's impossible to complete the game 100% without the correct characters, Every level has locked areas you need certain elemental Skylanders for, to find collectibles and extra customization, and to complete all stars on each level. This is an issue that is in every single game within the series, and unfortunately becomes greedier the later it continues. Spyro's Adventure was the first of its series, and wasn't expected to take off at all. It is a small game that purely captures the sense of magic that blew up to a scope that wasn't expected, taking us to Skylanders Giants. It created a really cool concept and great foundation to build upon, which is what happened just 1 year later with what some considers the best Skylanders game